Apple just released an iPhone that had its charging port dictated by a government, and that government is not stopping there. This is one of the biggest things happening in tech right now. It could change the entire landscape, and while everyone is talking about the new shiny thing, or if that new shiny thing is getting too hot, this is happening right under our noses.
Well, Apple was about 90 days away from going bankrupt back then, in the early days, and it was much worse than I thought when I went back initially. But there were people there who I'd expected all the good people would have left. And I found these miraculous people, these great people, and I said, why? I tried to ask this as tactfully as I could, but why are you still here? and you know, a lot of them had this little phrase. They said, because I bleed in 6 colors.
Yeah.
Which was the old 6-color Apple logo. And that was code for, because I love this, what this place stands for, or at least stood for. And that just made all of us want to work that much harder to have it survive and have those values survive and bring it back.
The iPhone 15 lineup was just released, and yep, if you didn't know for some reason, for the first time ever, we have USB-C ports on iPhone instead of Lightning. The kicker is that this was not Apple's decision. As far back as 2021, lawmakers within the European Commission have been trying to establish a common charger rule for smartphones, tablets, and other accessories. And while at first that might sound harmless, if we say the quiet part out loud here, that law really seems like it's more or less targeting the big fruit company. And if Apple didn't want to be hit with equally massive fines, they were going to have to play ball before the deadline of 2024. And that is where we are right now. Apple is doing their part to play nice and is currently in the process of completely ditching Lightning in favor of USB-C on pretty much everything. We saw iPhone and AirPods make the switch, with more and more Apple stuff to jump ship as the months pass. Because if you didn't know, corporations typically like to keep their money and not pay it out in fines to governments when they can help it. Sure, this change over to USB-C for iPhone is generally a big win for consumers as a whole, and Apple has definitely and conveniently spun this little curveball into a nice, comfy upgrade, like being able to use iPhone to reverse charge accessories and even record high-fidelity ProRes video directly into external storage. That, of course, is super neat. But now, the other shoe is about to drop. Have you ever read that little kid's book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? The gist of the book is that a little boy gives a mouse a cookie, but then the mouse wants more than the cookie. Then the mouse asks for a glass of milk, and then asks for a straw to go with the milk, and yeah, you get it. The European Commission just got the biggest cookie that has ever been baked. You know, VPNs are great, but what if you could plug in just a single dongle and bam, perfect, subscription-free, industry-leading VPN service? That's why today's video is sponsored by the DeeperConnect Air. The DeeperConnect Air is the best way for users to have a secure, fun, and ad-free internet experience, period. And listen, this isn't one of your typical run-of-the-mill VPN services either. The DeeperConnect Air offers a best-in-class, decentralized VPN. You can expect everything from internet ad blocking, geo-unblocking, and even the ability to relocate apps to experience other countries' content. And pricing. The DeeperConnect Air is your ticket to an unrestricted, open internet experience while keeping all of your devices safe, all while being smaller than your iPhone. So bring your internet privacy into the future with DeeperConnect Air. Make sure to click the link in the description so you don't miss out. As always, thanks to Deeper Network for sponsoring this video, but also for keeping me safe online. Think about this for a second. A world government just made Apple, the most stubborn and stuck in their own walled garden company that has ever existed, completely roll over and do a little trick for them. Like, bro, they actually won! Tim Cook was slain in Mortal Kombat. I remember when the news hit that the EU had successfully passed their law, pretty much everyone was like, no way, LOL, Apple can just pay the fines. There was no way, right, that Apple would ditch Lightning for a port that Android devices use. But here we are. It happened. And now we're in a world where USB-C is the iPhone charging port. No more proprietary cords, and we are well on our way to no more Lightning accessories, no more Lightning anything. Well, wouldn't you know it, that cute little European mouse in his cute little European mouse business suit is now asking for some milk with that cookie. A week or so ago, a chief of EU industry, Thierry Breton, publicly called on Tim Cook to open up the iPhone's walled garden ecosystem of hardware and software to rivals. In a quote, Terry said, "The next job for Apple and other big tech under the DMA Digital Markets Act is to open up its gates to competitors. Be it the electronic wallet, browsers, or app stores, consumers using an Apple iPhone should be able to benefit from competitive services by a range of providers." This doesn't seem like an unreasonable request for most companies, and it can be hard to pinpoint where the problem lies exactly for iPhone users, for Apple fans in general, but let's really look at what this means. Under this new DMA law, the Digital Markets Act, Apple's major platforms like the App Store, Safari, and iOS as a whole were officially classified as gatekeepers. And as a solution, Apple is expected to add support for the side loading of apps from outside the App Store on iPhones and iPads. Apple's argument for their walled garden approach has always been user security and privacy. Obviously, the lack of competition in their own platform is another huge positive. And our guy Terry was quick to respond to that argument too. In a quote, he said, "EU regulation fosters innovation without compromising on security and privacy." And in a very Apple move, they haven't responded to this comment. But I will. This is f***ed up.
We're just people running this company. We're trying to make great products for people. And so we have at least the courage of our convictions to say, we don't think this is part of what makes a great product. We're going to leave it out. Some people are going to not like that. They're going to call us names. It's not going to be in certain companies' vested interests that we do that, but we're going to take the heat because we want to make the best product in the world for customers. And we're going to instead focus our energy on these technologies, which we think are in their ascendancy and we think are going to be the right technologies for customers. And you know what? They're paying us to make those choices. That's what a lot of customers pay us to do, is to try to make the best products we can. And if we succeed, they'll buy them. And if we don't, they won't.
This opening of Apple's ecosystem is not pro-consumer. This is not something that the consumer, Apple's iPhone users specifically, are even asking for. This is just anti-Apple, and it's kinda gross. Stripping a company of core values that it grew on is like ripping the roots from a tree. This walled garden from Apple, the carefully crafted ecosystem of hardware and software, is the company. This is the experience. This is why people buy iPhones. Consumers do not want an Android phone with an Apple logo on the back. They want an iPhone, dude. Yeah, you know, I'm a little annoyed here, honestly, because I have been trying to say this. Ever since we found out that Apple was in fact going to comply, that we were getting USB-C on an iPhone, ever since we found out that the EU is getting their way, I have been trying to say that this is now a very, very slippery slope. A government agency of any kind being able to change and mold a company away from its own DNA is nothing but a misappropriation of power. They got the cookie, and now they're coming for more. But where does this road end? I'm sorry, if this is about choice, if this is about giving consumers more choice, I just very much disagree. Consumers have choice right now. If they feel more comfortable with Apple's business models, they can have it. If they feel more comfortable with the freedom of Android, they can have it. They can have both, and they can have all of the tiny nuances in between. What the EU is trying to force, and any changes they attempt to make following this, if it works out, that doesn't foster change. In fact, I'd argue that longer term, all it does is make everything more the same. If the EU was trying to force Android to be locked down like iOS, would you be okay with that? I just want to know, where's the line? Where would you draw it? Slippery slope arguments are all fun and games, and usually aren't a good way to make a point. That is, until you start watching one unfold. Apple isn't Apple because they're a gatekeeper, and they aren't anti-consumer because they don't let you load up the Play Store on an iPhone. Apple is only able to create these devices and these software experiences because they're the only game in town. To this day, Apple still has one of the only ecosystems to truly secure user data and make it a core pillar of the entire company. If we look at what this EU law wants to accomplish from Apple's side of things, what is there to gain? Actually, why would Apple want to open up the iPhone ecosystem to sideloading other app stores, or give users access to things like Samsung Pay or whatever? When they sell an iPhone to a customer, they know exactly what type of experience that customer is going to have with an iPhone. That's because they control the whole experience, top to bottom, hardware to software. They control it all. If they give up that control, how is that better for Apple? How is that better for you? In our The iPhone 15 has a serious problem video, I said that when Apple presents new ideas and features and products, they act like they are the only company in the world, the only one that matters to you. It's because of this walled garden, this ecosystem, that Apple is able to provide the experience that billions of people get to enjoy. It's also what makes the iPhone the best-selling smartphone every year. My point is, you can't get what Apple has with what the EU wants. Have you ever heard the ship of Theseus paradox? Effectively, it says something along the lines of, you can replace one single part of a ship and it remains the same ship. But if you keep replacing parts of that ship with newer parts, at what point is it no longer the same ship? At what point is it just a new thing? If Apple continues to allow the EU to manipulate core values of the company, at what point do we lose Apple? How many parts have to change before Apple is just a name? What I think needs to happen here sooner rather than later is Tim Cook needs to put his foot down, call their bluff, threaten to stop sales of iPhone in all 27 EU-covered countries. This might end up coming down to a game of chicken just to see who needs who more. There's a line that Apple cannot let be crossed, a line where the CEO of a company built on strict principles has to step in to protect those strict principles. And quietly, these may be some of the biggest decisions Tim Cook will ever have to make. He may have to decide between saving the iPhone in 27 European countries or saving Apple. When the EU chief says EU regulation fosters innovation without compromising on security and privacy, show me. Show Apple, show iPhone customers how the changes they claim to want to implement for our benefit are actually for our benefit and not just their own. Because I think what we're looking at is someone lobbying to change the rules of the game because someone is winning and it isn't them.
I don't see why you have to change if you get big.